Tuesday on Spotlight Now, we catch up with Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi.
From issues with heart leadership to the outages in Chinatown, plus his newly approved budget, there's always a lot to talk about. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suji and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Hello and thanks for tuning in here on this Tuesday for Spotlight Now. One of the things that we like to do in our conversations with our guests, of course, is to engage you, the viewing audience. We want to encourage those of you who are watching online on Facebook, please submit your questions for our guests, or you can scan this QR code that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any part during this conversation, you have a question for the mayor, we encourage you to please participate with us.
We want to welcome to the studio now Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Always great to be with you, and always a challenge.
Hey, we've got a full hour, and
I know.
I think we have more than an hour worth of questions today.
I'm not surprised.
I want to dive right into
Okay.
it and start off with heart and your sort of assessment with what's happening with the leadership there. The meeting last Friday got canceled. We were hoping we would have some developments to talk about, but in the absence of that, what's your assessment about what's happening between the board and Lori Kahikina?
You know, normally I would not talk about a personnel matter, but this has become public record, and I've now gone on public, both not only with the media but the Heart Board, with respect to my strong recommendation for Lori to receive a multi-year contract. You know, I've been working with her now for the last 3.5 years, and I know what it was like in the beginning. I know how we slugged it out, getting to where we were. I went to Washington with her, our presentation to the FTA. You know, we got some things done beyond the fact that we're coming up on a 1-year anniversary of the operation of rail, but, you know, we were able to overcome common myth, if you will, about the FFGA not being able to be amended and truncating the route and not having to do an EIS and so on and so forth, coming in on, you know, re-racking the budget, all of our plans, took away all the concern that was there. You know, when we came in, I mean, the prior administration appointed Lori. I had nothing to do with Lori's hiring. I met her. I was aware of her reputation. But we started out really in a deep hole because the month before we took office, the prior administration pulled the P3 and it did the changeover in the CEO, so that in and of itself. But if you recall, they announced a budget deficit of some $3.67 billion. I can still remember that, and that was hanging over everybody's head. And then added extension in time delay to 2033 to Ala Moana. And that was sort of the conventional thinking. So knowing that and knowing that the public was really, even though we're in the middle of the pandemic, having gone through endless Zoom calls and listening to countless people for many months complain about the rail and their fear of it, really, from the standpoint of cost runaway, et cetera, I thought we've overcome a lot, and Lori's been there. She was there, and quite honestly, I think even in this phase of construction, it really needs an engineer, not an administrator. So I've been very vocal, and we had been that way behind closed doors, asking for her extension prior. But this was a time now to step forward. I mean, I'm online. I have a lot of people ask me about my authority in this, and I'll just tell you that there's an overriding authority. I mean, the Heart Board has been set up to be this autonomous organization, but I'm on the hook with the FTA, and we got the FTA to come back to the table, not only to approve our plans, but to be a construction partner, once again, for some $744 million. I've had ongoing conversations with the FTA as recently as early this week. So I've been very much involved with that, so I hope that my voice is heard, and I expect it to be heard, quite honestly, at this week's board meeting.
How do you navigate that, knowing that there has been this public criticism by the Heart Board and, the chair, Colleen Hanabusa, and the dynamics that exist between these two leaders in these positions, and your role? How have you helped to foster that or navigate any disagreements that may be between the two?
Well, look, candidly speaking, in the beginning, we were meeting weekly for 90 minutes all the way through for the first 3 years. We backed off last year once we got operational, and then the city was sort of split on the line for operating and maintenance, and then as well the ongoing construction. And we started meeting only once a month, relying heavily on Roger Morton, our head of transportation services. And so, you know, what's evolved in board sessions, it got pretty messy, and it became public. And I know that Lori's been on this show, much has been talked about it, and I'm not looking back, I'm looking forward. So, you know, sometimes you hope that behind closed doors, Managing Director Formby and myself, we've had very candid conversations. And Mike is very knowledgeable about the rail, but we also had a very good relationship with Colleen as board chair, other members of the HART board, some of whom I appointed, and certainly ongoing working relationship with Lori. This just got away, if you will. It created a lot of consternation in the community. That's the last thing we wanted. We worked really hard to create not only credibility, but give people a sense of confidence about where we were going with the rail and that it was well managed and under control. So I'm anxious for this to be put to bed, and I expect that it will be put to bed. I just yesterday had a meeting with them and told them we're going to put in abeyance until we get this worked out, any plans for further extensions. But I've also talked with the FTA, again, as recently as last week, about rail extensions and what that would look like and the time that we're actually in that window now for an extension to begin talking about the next phase. So this is a $9.8 billion phase. It's a little bit more than 18.8 miles or so outside of Ala Moana, but certainly we have room to get to Ala Moana and room to take it deeper into, it is the fastest growing part of the island on the west side. And that's kind of what I hope to at least be in the planning stages for rail. So it's about more rail, not less rail. And the last thing we need right now is all of this distraction. And as I said, I'm counting on it coming to an end.
And you did say that your reputation with the federal government is on the line as well. And I'm interested because the contractors that now are putting in the bids for this next phase have said that, this uncertainty at the top gives them pause. The federal government has basically said the same thing. What are your concerns?
Well, we don't like it. Look, that's why I don't like this whole thing. And that's why I was as assertive as I could possibly be and as civil, but direct. And it's not even my reputation, Yunji. It's really about the commitment. I made a commitment to the FTA. And so, yeah, in some ways it's sort of reputation, but I assure them as the mayor of the city and county of Honolulu, what we said we were going to do, we would do. And so I didn't anticipate this kind of flare-up. Everything else was about trying to figure out, okay, the reality of our numbers and trying to offer our public, look, we're not going to be raising property taxes to fund this thing. It's no longer a deep black hole. We've kind of come up with a game plan that said, this is the money we have on through 2030, $9.8 billion. This is how far we can take it, possibly further, and try to bring that calm to our community. I felt we owed it to them because almost from its launch, it was highly criticized. And, we were actually in a really sweet spot there for a long time of people not criticizing the rail and taking issue. So this became a personnel drama, and I want it stopped. I want it rectified.
It's been about a month since we had that conversation with Lori Kahikina here in the studio, and one of the questions that we posed to her was, even if you get approved, do you want this job, given all the circumstances? In the conversations that you have with her, do you still feel that there's a motivation there for her to continue in this role?
I believe in Lori's integrity, and when she tells me she wants a multi-year contract and she's into this project based on the last 3.5 years working together. I mean, we might have been strangers when we first met, but we've been through a lot in 3.5 years. And so I do believe her, and it's not an easy job. This is a really challenging job, and it takes a lot. But she's doing it, and she's doing it well. And maybe I'm the old coach, right? You got somebody out there playing really well. You don't change up here, And so that's sort of what we're looking at, and especially if she wanted to do it. Initially, she wanted only a 1-year contract extension, and when I talked to her about why only 1 year in the beginning, it was like, based on what I just said, this job is really challenging and difficult. She saw it through, getting everything approved and getting it running. But now she wants a multi-year contract. I'm good with that.
Okay, last question on this because I know we got a lot to cover.
Yeah.
But, in this studio, she did say that she felt that she was bullied. Do you think, based on what you see and what you've seen in the tapes and your understanding of the interactions, do you feel like she was bullied?
That's a hot topic. And I would tell you, candidly speaking, having had the CEO title for a number of years, what goes on in boardrooms, sometimes the public never gets to see. It's not pleasant. The challenge with this one is that it was being televised. And so, yeah, things get heated. There was some justification for some of those exchanges. And so I think that when you're a leader, you have to have broad shoulders. And so when you start talking about bully, that's a very different kind of a connotation for me. I think when you walk in and you're dealing with something that's as significant a project as this one, that I think you have to be ready for the questions, the tough questions. This thing just became dramatic because it was public, and that becomes an issue. But no, I don't think anybody's been bullying in my context, in my life experience, and what I've had to deal with, okay, and how I view bullying. Just that I can understand I can understand the sensitivities here. And I want to be respectful on both sides.
Where we want to switch gears and talk about another headline last week, and that was the power outages that we saw in Chinatown. Before we dive into this topic, I did just want to do a full disclaimer here. In addition to the work that I do on television here in Spotlight Now, I also am a small business owner of a business in Chinatown. We unfortunately were impacted by the blackouts and announced today that we are actually closing our doors. But my question for you, Mayor, is in the conversations that I had with other Chinatown businesses, one of the things that we've heard is that the businesses there are a little worried that this could be an ongoing issue, that this fix that what we saw isn't something that is going away anytime soon. Have you had any conversations with HECO about what caused this blackouts and maybe what they're doing to prevent something like this from happening again?
I'm waiting for the report, Ryan. First of all, I'm very sorry you lost your business. I mean, on the heels of COVID, where so many businesses were shuttered, and we were trying so hard, especially in our food and beverage businesses, to get them to come back. And Chinatown is a key area of focus because it's so ripe to have great little businesses like the bar that you had down there and be an attraction for people to come. So I've not gotten the final word. Obviously, HECO runs independent of the city's operations. We have had conversations with the senior management there. They're out trying to offer us as many assurances as possible. We deal with the blackouts on a couple of different levels, not just in the economic impact of Chinatown, but this has a lot to do with power outages across the island as part of our own, challenges on everything we're doing with fire mitigation and so on. So this is just a really unfortunate thing. And all I can tell you is I know there are really good people there at the top. This is of real concern, and your experience is exactly what we didn't want to have happen.
We've got the rail coming into that area soon,
Sure.
and in our conversations with Lori Kahikina, she talks about the infrastructure and just, the challenges. The Dillingham corridor we know is going to be the hardest part, but she's anticipating similar issues when she goes through downtown and Chinatown. Do you worry that there could be, that there could be a confluence of issues between the power issues that we've seen and then now this construction coming through?
Well, I don't know if there's conflict of issues. It's the challenge is how do you do that? When you think about this, we talk about a tough piece of construction. Here we are, virtually simultaneously going to do utility relocations underground, and at the same time, very soon to be building a guideway coming down through it. And to build a bridge just in and of itself through downtown is a phenomenal thing when you think about those pillars and how deep they have to go and all of that stuff, and then moving utilities around to make room for that, and at the same time not this is going to be an incredible challenge. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about. I know we moved off of rail per se. Why especially would hope to have continuity in the leadership of HART, especially with an engineer that's already gotten us through some very difficult periods. So, look, this has never been done before. And anytime you approach something like that of this significance and what's on the line, yeah, do you worry about it? Yeah, you live with it. I mean, we just hope that we've got skilled professionals working with all the right people to the best of their ability to execute this. It's not going to be easy. This is a very difficult assignment.
And just finally, when you talk about Chinatown, this is an area that you actually campaigned on. You said from the beginning that this was an area of the town that you really wanted to invest in, and you have continued on in just those promises that you made during the campaign, really putting a lot of energy and effort into cleaning up that neighborhood. What can you say about just where things stand right now, beyond just the blackouts and some of the suffering that these businesses have faced, but the progress that the area has made during this time?
Well, look, we've had some real progress. We haven't solved everything involving crime and homelessness. We haven't, but we've cleaned it up a whole lot. We've now got more security cameras on there. By the end of the year, we'll have 52, which has also helped us. We're trying to beef up our police department, have more patrol there. We're cleaning the streets. We're doing double street washing. We finished Kekaliki Mall. There's, we've done anything and everything we can to get outdoor dining, encourage restaurants to move in, try to work with that and take down any barriers to starting a business down there. We've approved a number of housing projects down there to activate that place, and we've been working closely with those developers. So, it's hard to say where we are on the scale of things, but we're going at it, with even our recent acquisition of Evile, that we bought. That's right there, adjacent to. I mean, between Chinatown and downtown is, and what we want to be able to do in transforming that area as well. So I think, we're going to work this thing as hard as we can for the next 4.5 years, and hopefully whoever comes in to succeed us will have not only something going on that's really good, but we'll continue with that. But we just look at it as for both our local people, but for visitors as well. And then for the people who actually make a living there, it's just such a cool place with such an incredible history. And quite honestly, I'll just give you to make some news. I'm in conversations with the Taiwanese government about the Riverwalk and the Cultural Plaza, because that's a centerpiece. And so I'm hoping to meet with at least the representatives of the new president, but we've got to get on their radar screen, not the team people that have been managing that. I want to go right to the decision makers. There's an old adage in sales, never take a no from somebody who can't give you a yes. I've asked, who are the yes people? Turns out it's the new president of Taiwan. We've asked our contacts both here in Hawaii and Los Angeles to help us with that. And so far we've had an open door to talk about the possibilities of doing a joint venture with them, because that alone, if you think about it, that piece of real estate, which is an ill-conceived concept as it stands today, could really do a tremendous transformation, and what that would do for knowing that we've got a historic theater area right next door. So I could talk about this for the next hour. It's exciting. It's fun to do. For all that I just said about the trepidation, if you will, of the challenges going forward with respect to the design and construction and execution of the rail, this stuff is gratifying. Cleaning up Sun Yat-sen Park, I know you were right across the street, was a really cool thing to do. Moving that statue, as simple as it seems, from the back of that thing into the forefront. And people, every time I go down there, I was just there the other day, it looks pretty good. If nobody's abusing it, and people appreciate it. Work we're trying to get done with the Downtown Arts Center in Sandy Pole. We're doing a lot down there to try to get that going. And I think we're almost there, and Sandy knows that. So look, Ryan, it's part of where people live. It's where a lot of us like to go and play, and a lot of people work there. So it's like that.
Let's go down the street to Ke'eaumoku and the Ala Moana area. When we think about crime and areas that need attention, we often focus on downtown and Chinatown, but we've seen some pretty tough incidents in that area. June 15th, we had the terrible stabbing of a Walmart employee at a bus stop there. Yep. We also have seen, if you go on social media, there are video after video of smash and grabs, folks on bikes, right, cruising down Makaloa Street, smashing the windows in broad daylight and taking things right out. What is the focus? What is the crime prevention that can be done in that area specifically?
Well, my immediate reaction, when the stabbing happened, they talked about suddenly it was a lot of exposure about, as you said, assault, smash and grab, and then hearing from some of the merchants who had their cars broken into, who had people come in and literally steal money out of their cash registers, one incident where they came in and terrorized patrons. I mean, just out of control stuff. I spoke with Chief Logan over a week ago on this, and so I've asked for not only increased police presence there, which he understood. We needed to respond with police presence on the street, visible, not just in cars, but also they have. Well, I don't know if I should say this, but I'll say it anyway because of what he told me. They've also have put in a number of plainclothes people because they feel that's the best opportunity, undercover, if you will. I'm hesitant to use the word undercover because I think it has under connotations, but certainly police officers not in uniform to give them the best opportunity to apprehend these people. Look, there's Ke'eaumoku Street. That area is very dense, both in population, just visitors, everything else, and that also is a hotbed, and we should jump all over that to not have that go on. So I'm counting on our police work to be highly effective there. That's the best I could do is talk to the chief and ask him, actually tell him that was the expectation. He was in agreement.
And when it comes to these types of situations in the past, we've saw the partnership that you've developed with the Honolulu Prosecutor's Office to start programs like Safe and Sound, the Weed and Seed that is in Chinatown. At what point do some of these areas fall into that category where you're going to need to look at a more comprehensive program when examining some of these crimes that are happening?
Well, I think, look, we want to be, if there's anything, it's the number one priority. I talk about the different priorities and what's more equal, if you will. Public safety obviously is, and so we don't want anybody living in fear. That just kills the heart of a city. And so, yeah, I mean, whether it's Weed and Seed, Safe and Sound, and I appreciate, Ryan, you brought up the fact. I'm proud of the fact that we're able to work in a very collaborative way with the chief of police and the prosecutor's office, and even getting some real support by the judiciary as well when it comes to actually criminalizing the criminals, if you will, and some of the cases being made, and we're trying to do the very best we can. I have zero tolerance on this, and at the same time, I'm frustrated that you have repeat offenders over and over again, and so we're just going to keep at it. And look, we're a big city with a lot going on, It's not an excuse for anything like that, but it means all the more to the extent that we don't allow it, I don't want to have it. So that's where we are on that.
The city council approved your budget
Yep.
with a large investment in public safety.
Yes, we put a lot of money into our first responders in general.
So I
Yes.
want to ask you specifically what kind of a difference you're hoping that makes, because when Chief Logan came in, you know, he made a commitment to hire more officers, and despite his best efforts, we are still at a large deficit when it comes to police officers. What kind of a difference do you think that this money can make?
Well, you know, look, I mean, it takes money, first of all, so you got to make sure the money's there, right? Because if you don't have the money there, it's easy to lay off, say, we don't have the budget, we can't afford it. So we want to take that out of the conversation and make the challenge, you know, how do we recruit and what do we do? Our last 2 recruiting classes, since we put in the $25,000 signing bonus, have had dramatic increases, okay? But we're also up against the fact that this year we'll probably lose some 60 to 70 officers retiring through retirement. And so, you know, how do you get ahead of that curve? And so we've got to recruit very aggressively. And the signing bonuses are part of it. And there's just some other things that we're trying to do with the training classes and everything else. This is an ongoing challenge, but not just here in Honolulu. It's, you know, it's a national situation, and trying to stay in the pulse of that. Getting somebody to make a decision to go to work where they carry a gun in today's world is not the same as it was maybe even 25 years ago or 20 years ago. So we're doing everything we possibly can, recruiting in even younger levels into the high schools and doing whatever else we can appeal. But we're not going to make an excuse that there's no money. And we're not going to make an excuse we didn't have any incentive and signing bonuses. Plus, the job itself pays well. And we're doing everything we can to retain our officers. And, you know, part of our budget that just got approved is $115 million in hazard pay. And so we're going to be, this year, as part of probably a multi-year payout of what will be more than $115 million in dealing with our various departments, you know, paying those monies out too. So I think the job itself pays well. We've become competitive. We're doing what we can to recruit, you know. I don't know what else I could tell you. Just, you know, we have a 400 short. When I push them on that, you know, what would look really, really good? If we could get 250 of that 400, we'd be in a really, really good place. The 400 would be ideal. So we're trying to beat that number of retirements and get increased class sizes and do everything we possibly can against a very difficult labor market, and not the least of which is, you know, out-migration, younger people deciding to go and whatever else. And so this is a challenge. It really is. But we're not going to have money be an excuse.
I know might be a very difficult question to answer, but when looking at your budget, you obviously have to prioritize things. Is there one thing that you really want to see happen in this fiscal year that you're going to really prioritize moving forward and working with the council to see that maybe it's a project or maybe it's an initiative that you really want to see come to fruition with this budget?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, right? So we just stay right on public safety. I mean, I want to go all out on that. I mean, but it's not just what our police department is. It's, you know, it's our fire department, which is really excellent. You know, we look, and you can't discount the need for a really good fire department based on lessons learned from Lahaina. And what we have in our capability here. It's certainly our EMS, our first responders, and the ambulance services that we provide for people. I hear ambulances all day long. I know the amount of calls that they go on an annualized basis. I mean, those shifts that they work, 10 to 12-hour shifts, you know, they're on every hour. I mean, they do multiples of what people in the mainland do as far as shift work and the number of calls. And then recently splitting ocean safety into its own program and trying to make up for, and I know that one of the things you wanted to talk about with respect to ocean safety, the reason why we felt the need to do that is they were somewhat subordinated, and I think it's already shown its place in the lack of resources. Now we can take a minute from a budgeting standpoint and a leadership standpoint. So I think, you know, having our first responders to the success we can to create, if we're going to go back and say public safety, how people feel about living here, and give people that least peace of mind, okay, is a big one to have in place, as a, you know. And so we're doing everything we can, understanding that that's a top priority. And then there's a lot of other things that we're just doing. And look, we've gone after this on so many levels to accomplish so many things that have everything to do with, and I don't want to sound cliche at all here, but it is about quality of life issues. It really is. It's a value proposition, especially if you're trying to fight something like out-migration. And I can't dictate payrolls of private industries. But to the extent that we have a galvanized workforce from the city and county and the services we're providing across the board, and we can make people feel like they've got that value. That's a big thing for us. So it's really collectively with our entire workforce, because we're recruiting at all levels, and we're actually for the second straight year ahead of the curve, where it's going to take us a while to cut into that, but we're ahead of the curve as far as not having negative. We lose almost 600 people a year overall in the city to retirement. So, if you want to start jumping on that number, you got to start recruiting 1,000 people a year. We're now in the 700 something. We're positive for the last 2 years. And I don't want to trivialize a couple hundred people to the positive over a year when you got a 10,000 workforce, but it's stuff like that, and then modernizing the city. Everything that we can possibly do to do that. The cameras in Chinatown is a good example. This is really state-of-the-art stuff, which will help as a crime deterrent, what we're doing there. But there's so many other aspects we're doing to modernize the city. I mean, we just did a groundbreaking at Blaisdell. It's photovoltaic. It's going to be state-of-the-art, 4,960 solar panels, so the thing can run on, and it's all of that.
Public safety is paramount when you're thinking about quality of life. And at a recent town hall in Waianae, you spoke about the need for residents to take back the community.
Yeah.
We're short on officers. We can't necessarily count on the police to be everywhere at all times. How do you, as the city, help to foster that? And we're going to go to break in just a minute, so we'll grab some water in then. But before we do go to break, can you elaborate on this
Sure.
idea that government can't be everywhere all at once?
It can. We have security watch programs in different neighborhoods that have been effective. To that particular point, I marched out of Nanakuli a couple of times prior and knew what they were saying, what they were doing. That comment was made by me in a challenging moment, because I really believed that the people there are so caring and so powerful, they didn't have to be victims. And so what I wasn't trying to do was trigger a vigilante moment. I wasn't suggesting that. Somehow it got interpreted that way. And I thought, okay, I can understand that, but most people know, and I saw it again, we were out there just this past week, Friday night. It was a combination of HPD being there. We had people there from Keiki to Kapuna. We had people there from ex-gang members, very serious gang member leaders, to ex-criminal, and all of those people coming together to tell the bad guys, if you will, you don't get to do that here. It was very powerful, and that's sort of what I meant, And then again, HPD was present there, but community neighborhood watches across the country, but even here on Oahu, can be very effective. It's people in their own places, and that was sort of the challenge of the moment when I said that. And again, we're not encouraging vigilante behavior, but I do tell you that I think that even being part of that last Friday night is very powerful, and it has an influence throughout the community, and it makes people feel good.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. A lot more to talk about with the mayor. You're watching Spotlight Now.
Welcome back to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. We're continuing our conversation with Mayor Rick Blangiardi. Of course, we want to always encourage all of you who are watching to engage in the conversation. You can scan the QR code that you see at the bottom of your screen and ask your questions for the mayor as we continue on in our discussions.
Yeah, and we were talking about quality of life and public safety. And, you know, I was just reflecting on an experience I had just yesterday. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I'm trying to get her to be able to ride on 2 wheels. We live downtown, and the Civic Center grounds are really the ideal place for that because you got those clear paths, no cars. And I was taking her there, and on our way there, we ran into a number of individuals, some clearly with mental health issues. You know, I got 2 little kids. I'm walking that, and it's scary, honestly. Right. And I have a lot of compassion for the folks who are suffering these mental health issues. And I'm thinking, you know, what is someone supposed to do in that circumstance, and how can we eliminate that kind of an issue, because it is scary, and also it's not great for the individual who's having those episodes on the street in public view.
The street is not a home, and there's people really suffering. And some of them don't even, they don't even know where they are. Right? Look, I'm really excited about where we are in being able to deliver real execution on our homeless problem. And it's because we're really now enjoined with the state, and I want to explain what we've done and what you can anticipate, and especially, in fact, I even have course hotline. Well, let me just talk about what the model always was. There were limitations to what the city could do in and of itself. The 2 things we could do is, first and foremost, which we did do, is develop a mobile crisis unit to try to mitigate all the pressure on 911 calls, having to deploy EMS, which we already have a limited amount of ambulances, and even HPD, right, which was typically what was coming in and what they were dealing with. Having a mobile crisis unit which we've now staffed up to 40 people, soon to be up to 50, with ambulances and SUVs and people who are medically trained for street medicine but can go out on location and establish relationship and pick people up was the first thing. And then developing places for them to go is the other thing that the city could do, which we have done. We've bought some places. What we were missing was what the state can provide. And the state can do that because that's where the Department of Health resides. That's where the federal funding comes in to be able to staff these places. So whether we want to pay nonprofits like Catholic Charities or North Shore Medical, you probably just saw recently on Leahi what we're doing out there, the Lutheran group from California, or for that matter, Dr. Miskovich and his team, which I'll get into specifics, whom we just hired, and some other places, all using federal subsidies, okay? Because you've got to be able to treat them. So where we are, and honestly, I think the governor and I have been talking extensively about this. We were targeting Labor Day last year, almost a year ago. And then when Maui happened in the first week of August, on August 8th, that derailed everything. And it's actually not until only recently we kind of got back on track. So we now have money to staff, if you will, to provide care. So it's a 3-way piece. State plays a big part of it, and this is where the collaboration comes in. Plus, the state has access to those tiny homes at Kauhali. In fact, we are about to open up the first Hawaiian Bank building, which we bought, and hopefully will be operational within a week. We're going to be announcing it, so here's a little breaking news. 30 Kauhali on the outside, 30 beds on the inside, total of 60, fully staffed with a medical team of trained all the way through psychiatrists to other people, and an ability to pick up people on the street. And we've been successful. I want to be careful here, but we were successful with the ACLU, and then the recent rulings that came out. So we could even take people because of it's a medical condition and an involuntary hold. That person that's lying on the street, or sometimes, as you said, screaming at the moon. We've all seen them. It could be very scary. And I've said repeatedly, I really respect how people fear. What might frighten you might not frighten Ryan, or even vice versa, or me, whatever. Or I might frighten me and you may not. But you have to be respectful of that. So we're going to start. That's just one facility.
And just a clarification, where the first Hawaiian Bank building, in which
right
area?
Across from Olive Park, South Peritane Street. I'm sorry. That's why and that you'll see that come to life very quickly. We're really close at Evil Center that we bought. We're putting 100 beds in there. In fact, by this year we'll have as Anton Krucky would tell you, 800 beds. And Sam Moku, our homeless coordinator with John Mizuno, have been working really closely. So the governor has access to these homes. They've already done some Kahali things. We've got beds in there. It's having the medical staff and the money to pay for that we didn't have. we are going to kick it into a whole different gear. And I'm not opposed to saying, if I'm driving around and I see somebody on a street corner yelling at the moon, to call CORE and say, pick them up. And so I think you're going to start to see that. That's the thing I feel good about this, is we're talking about taking them in for treatment. There's a lot of people out there that are suffering from schizophrenia and bipolar who are not on many kind of meds who can be stabilized. Half of that population, I would tell you, the point in time count was a little bit misleading. Let me just offer something in a sense. I know it went up 12% year over year, but if you go back to pre-COVID, 2019, the numbers are almost identical. By one person is the difference. And whether or not I buy into an absolute point in time count accuracy, let's just say it. So the good news is we got through COVID without a tremendous increase in homelessness. Okay, because that number we're talking about was only in the matter of a couple of hundred, and we already know some of that is actually coming from off island. We don't have really a border crisis, but we understand that. And where we increase, though, and why this is going to be so important, is the chronic homeless within that. People who are suffering from mental disease, addictions, tough to deal with, incorrigible, if you will, who don't like rules, who don't want to go somewhere, is what we need to attack, if you will. But you need places to provide treatments for them, and so you're going to start to see that. I think it's going to manifest in a dramatic way. That's our expectations. We're making the resources available. In a bed like in Honu, where we have 40 people, that this is temporary housing to get them to something else. So a Honu project that has 40 beds over the course of a year could do several hundred people. So I'm counting on the fact, and look, and homelessness is now pervasive. It's island-wide, and there's a different issue if you're out in Waianae and how you're dealing with it versus in the urban core, or for that matter, in our neighborhoods. I know you mentioned you live in downtown, but Hawaii Kai, Anaheim, Niu Valley, Waikiki. And so we're going to, along with our overall efforts of just focusing on this as a critical problem, I think you're going to see a real difference here. And so, again, it's a collaboration of the city and the state. This is unprecedented, and I'm really proud of that. The governor and I have a really good working relationship. We talked earlier about no drama, if you will, with our police officers, our prosecutor's office, and for that matter, the city council. And we're operating, what's one of the things that we talked about, and it's something that I believe in. You have to have collaboration. So we're really involved together on this. Governor has a lot of resources through the state and the federal government. That's why I was back in Washington just 6 weeks ago, back there asking for more HUD vouchers to allow us to put people who are looking for housing that we can help with and subsidize housing, and understanding that whole thing. And so we're doing a lot there. I think, honestly, in this coming year, as I just said, when you asked me what's the big thing, when I talk about public safety, it's also addressing homelessness in an unprecedented way, and families in need, and providing housing for them, knowing full well we have a housing crisis in the bigger picture, but being able to take care of this population. I've said all along, it's a scalable population. It's a scalable problem. If you look at the numbers, if you just took the point in time count as an absolute number of 4,500, that's less than 1% of our population, of this island, not the state, of this island. And when you think about that, it's amazing how that number is in everybody's face. And we recognize that. So it is a scalable problem. The concern I have with this point in time count is the chronic homeless number jumped up. And we know that, and we see them out there. And we're about to do something about that.
Well, a lot of breaking news happening here today. One of the headlines there, no drama between the mayor and the city council. That is a breaking news in and of itself.
They passed our budget unanimously. No,
Yeah,
we wanted that.
that's great.
And Tommy and I, we did the press conference the other day with Radiant Cordero in the room, and Esther Kiana was in there, and Radiant was budget chair, and that's the chair and vice chair of city council. Yeah, we wanted to work together. Look, we owe it to the people who live here to be a functioning government. I know that the distrust in government in general has gone down. We share that with our team. We talk a lot about regaining trust and building hope back into our community. And how are you going to do it if we're all, in some form of dysfunction on some interpersonal ego trip? Which is why I'm going to go back to it. I probably shouldn't do that. The whole rail thing bothered me because that's not the style of our administration. That's not what I expect. That's not, we never had the opportunity to work directly together before, but my reputation in this place and how we used to operate was exactly that. You expect professional people to be able to work together in a professional way and keep out all that other stuff. There's no need for that. It doesn't do anything but satisfies people's egos, and I'm not a big believer in that.
I want to go back to just a follow-up question about
Yeah.
core and services. As you mentioned, you said that you would call core right away if you see someone on the street.
Yeah.
That is something that I think many residents out there feel like they don't know what to do when confronted maybe with the situation. Is that something that you would encourage people to do, is to utilize the service of core more by calling if they're confronted or if they see that?
They should call core, and we're getting better and better at our ability to pick up people. And I don't have the phone number off the top of my head. I left my cell phone, my iPhone, which so I don't have it right now, but I will get that to you, and you can. I should know that. I don't. That's the problem with this. When you can just push a button. I don't remember the phone numbers. That's, but we want people to be able to do that, and we want to be able to respond, and so we're expanding that service. But honestly, having a mobile crisis unit from an intervention standpoint was absolutely essential. We were able to get that. Then having places to take them and having beds was really important. This combination now of being able to draw down on funds to pay medical help is the secret sauce, as I've said all along.
I want to go back to this First Hawaiian Bank building, and I'm trying to envision exactly where this is. Is this apartments?
Right across from Olive Park.
Okay.
It's that First Hawaiian Bank. It's been right there on King Street.
And what resources will be there? Are we looking at
Fully staffed
tiny
medical.
tiny bed tiny
No.
like what
There's
are we
going to be
looking
30 of those tiny homes on the outside. We'll clean up the whole area. You'll see a fence going up there. There's going to be 30 beds inside. It's going to be a total of 60 beds in that facility, staffed with medical help.
at? And when is that opening?
Well, I jumped the gun. You said you wanted some breaking news. It was actually supposed to have opened June 17th. That just passed. It's going to come up, I think, by next week. We're already in there with the medical team preparing right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Ryan. I mean, you made a good point. I saw that gentleman yesterday having a clear episode. It didn't even occur to me to call CORE. It occurred to me to just get my kids out of there, right, in that moment.
Right.
But it does make sense that there are these city resources, and I feel like I'm overinformed for a living, and I don't even think of it.
Yeah, and so we need to do a better job getting out there, and we will. Now that we have, that was the problem. We were developing the intervention. They were doing a good job of building trust in the streets and taking people to some facilities. This is much more of a concerted effort because we're now, working with, nonprofit groups. I mean, even the stuff we're doing in Waikiki Vista, I can go on and on. I mean, there's just a lot we're doing. That we've got places to put people and be able to take care of them. Okay.
Want to talk about another issue, and that is with fireworks. The city council is considering a measure that would ban certain fireworks, which include sparklers and fountains. We see what New Year's Eve looks like here on the island, not necessarily those fireworks, which already are illegal. But your thoughts about this measure moving forward?
Well, let me give you a little bit broader context. I mean, if Maui wasn't shocking, and I certainly don't want to trivialize that at all. I mean, it's such an incredible, horrific event. And then we had our Mililani fires, which were not incidental, by the way. We were able to quell that and deal with it. It took 40 days to finally get those fires out. It was all done from the air, but we had 7 military helicopters, Chinooks and Blackhawks up there, in addition to HFD, dropping lots of water, and that was in a lush area, if you will. And so then we knew the holidays were coming, and we said, look, wildfires are very real, and at the end of the day, you got to take this stuff seriously. And we went out and we all got on. We went on television. We did everything we could, telling people not to do aerial fireworks. I went up on a roof on New Year's Eve, totally dismayed, because all I saw was probably more aerial fireworks, including right near where I live, And so at the end of the day, that was disconcerting. So I look at this bill coming up, and good, I have the number. Thank you for CORE. Look at this coming up, and I'm going to side with my fire chief. I've already notified the council. I'm going to veto that bill. I'm not going to approve it.
And that would allow for sparklers and fountains,
Yeah,
and you're just not going to do it.
Not going to do it.
July 4th is coming up,
July 4th is coming up.
We expect people to perhaps be engaging in some illegal activity there. What's your message to the public on that, especially in light of the fire season?
Don't. The thing is, it's not just even the wildfires. It's damages to people's houses and stuff like that, and not just. We shouldn't be. You got to be respectful here. And look, we have an incredible fire department, but we're just asking people to cooperate. Let's help. All that I'm saying to you today, from a leadership standpoint, when you ask me what's the biggest thing, making people feel safe, right? I've stayed on this theme. We talked about what we're going to do with homelessness. We've talked about police. all of this stuff. There's another version of it. It's another version where the average citizen thinks it's okay to do something illegal and without any consequence. Beyond the fact that people get hurt, this goes back to what you said to me about taking back a community. It's all interrelated. People have personal responsibility. And I get slammed every time I talk about that because somehow I had somebody actually tell me, what do you mean personal responsibility? We elected you to take care of us. And I go, who raised you? Who raised you? And I'm just saying it's the same thing here. This is our responsibility to each other, and I'm not going to sanction anything that could possibly trigger burning down a neighborhood or somebody's house or anything else like that. So we've notified the city council. That's my position. Scott's phone went off. He was getting the court number, and I can't read it.
We will get you that.
By the end of the show, we will get you the show
no
number.
worries.
And I should have known it off the top of my head. I apologize.
I want to ask you really briefly about Cocoa Crater and the rescues there. And I know that...
The number is 808-768-CORE, C-O-R-E.
Okay, 768 CORE. We got it
I
now.
know when he talks to me like that. Like, why don't you know that? Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I want to ask you about Cocoa Crater. It's the lead story in the Honolulu Star-Advertiser today about Diamond Head in particular and the rescues there. But we saw, two people needing helicopter rescue at Cocoa Crater. I wonder, that location in particular, is it time for a reservation system? Because at least that could help to mitigate some of this. Perhaps having someone say, hey, you're wearing slippers, maybe take a bottle of water, giving some advice. A lot of people have seen that on Instagram and think that they can just do a quick walk up and down, and obviously it's not the case.
That's a hard walk. I've been up there. That's a hard walk. And, it's ironic because tomorrow we're going to hear from the courts on Haiku Stairs, and I've been dealing with the brain damage from all of that now, and we're just going to see what the courts say. But we're in the process of deconstructing the stairs. This will probably be the last legal contest. But I absolutely agree with you. If you talk to ocean safety guys, they'll talk about the thousands of lives that they save in the parking lot. They see people coming to Sandy's and other places, and they can just tell.
Don't go in.
Why are you here? Just here's a car. This is the beach you ought to go to. There's a lot of that. I think we need to do the same preventative things. We've had some really good success with Hanauma Bay on reservation system. It's really worked out. It's really helped out a lot too. And I think we should look at something like that. Having gone up the stairs and coming down is I don't want to say treacherous for scaring people, but that's its own challenge. At least it was for me. And and so it's not an easy little walk in the park kind of thing. And I think we need to put people in touch with, look, I'm all for people doing adventuresome things, and especially like that. And we actually invested in the repair of Cocoa Head Crater, the stairs out there. And the thing in Manoa with Diamond Head, that's not that easy. I tell people all the time, yeah, it's beautiful, go up there and do it. But I look at the physical condition of some people I'm saying that to, and I'm thinking, I don't know if they could do that, I'm being really honest with you. So I think people need to be aware, as best we can educate them on site perhaps, for their own safety. And look, part of my rationale on Haiku Stairs is, I talked enough with HFD and HPD and the amount of rescues that have gone on over the years and how harrowing that is and so on. And people think, well, that's no big deal. It is for the people trying to rescue people. It really is.
I want to get your thoughts when you put together a budget. Obviously, you have to look at all different scenarios and look at projections of what the city is expected to bring in, looking tourism numbers, all these things ultimately impact your ability to kind of put a budget together. Having seen forecasts and things that are projected, knowing that, this may be also a soft year for tourism with spending a little down and visitors not arriving, your overall thoughts and concerns about the health of the city economy as a whole,
we're fine.
and being able to project things moving forward.
Yeah, well, nobody has a crystal ball. And look, I met last week. In fact, tomorrow morning I'm having breakfast with the hotel owners tomorrow. Last week with the hotel operators. I've looked at the forecast on tourism. Clearly, we don't expect to see Japanese visitors back for some time, quite honestly. In fact, there's a lot being discussed right now about the emerging Japanese visitor, the younger visitors, and how can they attract them different than the people who used to come here almost religiously, and that whole thing is changing. So not to go down the tourism lane, but I feel as far as overall economics and the balancing of our budget, which is about a $4.7 billion budget, I feel really good about it. I think that there was a lot of give and take. This is a budget that's reflective of where we wanted to put monies both in our CIP for capital improvements and in some of our operating lines. And so Budget and Fiscal Services under the leadership of Andy Kawano and Carrie Castle have done a really good job. The City Council, for the fourth straight budget we've done now, has approved it unanimously. This is really our second budget. Well, it's really kind of our third budget. The first budget we had 60 days, was the former administration. So I'm feeling pretty good about how we put the numbers on paper and where the revenue is going to come from. We're okay. You know what? I don't want to sound cavalier about that, because anything can happen in this world. But when I think about things we're dealing with, that I feel really good about, because it's a year-long process to put that budget together. It is labored over in countless hundreds of hours by so many people. In fact, I almost sometimes think it's a little bit too whatever, but it is. So it's well planned, and so I have a lot of confidence in that. It's all the other variables. That's our playbook, and then the game is on. And how do you adjust? You know what I mean? It's kind of like that.
Ever the coach.
Ever the coach.
We only have a few minutes left, but I want to ask you about your re-election campaign and how you're feeling about that. It looks like, the last time around, there were a lot of folks who wanted this job. This time, far fewer challengers. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I feel tremendous validation. I'm very proud of our team. I know that I'm the one getting elected, but I think the work we are doing, and some of it we've talked about today, but it's pretty extensive. I think people are seeing it. And, I've never been through a re-election before. And, there aren't a lot of candidates. So last time I resigned from this place on January 15th, announced on February 12th, and COVID happened 3 weeks later, and my life became never-ending Zoom calls, and you couldn't really raise money. This time, you don't have competition per se. And people say, so what do you need to raise money for? I said, well, we want a message to the public and whatever. And we did have a good fundraiser, and there's been a lot of validation, and a lot of people have said, hey, I didn't vote for you last time, you got my vote, that kind of stuff. So, look, I'm operating on the basis we're going to be here for 4.5 more years, and we're going to go kicking and screaming into the night when they tell us to finally get out of there. There's so much to do. I love this job. Our team is really great to work with. We brought in some really good people who are committed, who know what they're doing. It's a joy every day. Is it hard to, as we talk about the problems here, to deal with that stuff? Yeah, it is. But it's also, if we can work through solutions, it's very gratifying as well.
Well, before we let you go, we do this with the governor from time to time, and we just ask him some rapid-fire, lightning round questions just to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
Want to ask you, are you watching any shows, been watching? What kind of shows is the mayor watching or binge watching?
Well, back on House of the Dragons through the second season here. I mean,
good answer.
Who wouldn't be? I mean, and then I occasionally surf around Netflix to look for something. Okay. It's sort of like that.
When you're working out, what's on your playlist? What is the most played or listened to album or artist that you have?
I work out in a gym. It's kind of a throwback over to Kaiko Fitness, and they play. And I don't even want to, because the people that work out in there are so big and strong. I don't complain about the music, but it's a lot of music I would never play myself. I just kind of go along with it and figure it out. Yeah, but it's good. When
you're working late nights and you can't find something to eat, where's your go-to spot to eat in a pinch?
Wow. I go to the refrigerator as my go-to spot to eat. I don't go out. I just make myself some toast or whatever. I don't have a go-to late night place, but if I could, I'd probably sneak out to a pizza place if I could.
And final question, what do you miss most about coaching?
Well, I kind of think, and you just made a comment there, this is kind of a coaching job, being mayor. It really is in a lot of ways. I've always kind of had that sort of style, but when you get down to the game of football, that adrenaline rush, man, when you've worked all week or all season and you got and you're in that locker room before you take the field, and that energy, and knowing, especially if you're in an underdog role and there's a big crowd out there, that kind of stuff is unique to that. That's always been something that I've missed, because that's really special, and that had so much to do with who I am in my own experiences of that, both as a player and coach. It's kind of carried over.
All right. Well, Mayor, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. It always goes by so quickly when you're here with us.
It really does. I still have a list of questions, but next time.
Okay, next time.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suji. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders and taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, we heard a lot there from the Honolulu mayor, really talking, beginning the show talking, of course, about the dynamics that exist right now between the Heart Board and Heart CEO Laurie Kahikina, and the mayor really pledging his support for Laurie Kahikina.
Yeah, he says he expects that issue to be resolved by the next meeting, saying that there's a multi-year contract that he wants signed, that he wants these personnel issues in the past, and really pushing the Heart Board and the CEO to get along and get the project to continue to go well. He said he has a lot of concerns about what happened in Chinatown and the issues with PICO there, and also knowing that rail project is going to be moving through there, and we are going to see a lot of construction in that area.
But this is an area, of course, that the mayor has really made a priority. He accredited the staffing of police and really just the overall presence, the cleanups that are happening in the area continues to be a focal point of this administration, even talking about the Taiwanese government getting involved in certain aspects and areas of the area to really lift that area up and continue on in that preservation of this historic area of our town. We also got a glimpse into some happenings that will be happening and relationships with the state regarding homelessness.
Yeah, that's very interesting. He said right by the First Hawaiian Bank building, we are going to be seeing a new development there with about 60 beds, I believe he said. A lot of resources there for folks who are homeless or maybe mentally ill or perhaps both, and really hoping that that affects some change. Also, he mandated Chief Logan with putting more boots on the ground in the Ke'eaumoku area to address crime. Always so much to talk about with the mayor there, and I loved your last round of questions.
Yeah, we always like to do those fun lightning round questions. Of course, if you miss any part of this interview, you can always watch it back or catch the rebroadcast that will be happening a little bit later tonight. On the next episode, we're going to be focusing in on insurance.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot about the condo market and the rise of insurance on a really massive scale. So we've got some experts in here along with the state insurance commissioner. What is the state going to do to battle this issue? Join us for the next Spotlight Now on that. We leave you now with a shot of beautiful Hilo Bay. Looks like a nice clear day out there.